Welcome to Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Swannanoa Valley. My name is Heidi Blozan, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. Here we like to say you don't have to think alike to love alike. All are welcome. If you are new to UU or are a longtime UU, please read our mission statement and our 8 principles. They're found on the order of service. Please take a moment to silence your cell phones or noise devices. Thank you. We would like to especially welcome first and second time visitors. If you're willing, please stand and say your name and where you're from. We'll start over here.
I'm Sarah Goodnight, and I right now live in Oriental, North Carolina. I used to live here. I moved away 13 years ago. Kind of thinking of moving back. So I'll be here for probably the next 3 or 4 Sundays. Thanks.
Hello, good morning. My name is Steve Lister. My partner Sharice and I just moved here. From South Asheville, and we're really excited to be here and just live right down the street. So we're neighbors with this church, and I look forward to meeting everybody in this neighborhood.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Karina Miller, and I live in Swannanoa, and happy to be here. I brought my mom here to come and check y'all out.
Good.
God help y'all.
What's mom's name?
You can't take them anywhere. I'm Suzanne Fields, and I moved here from Tennessee, and I've been here since February 3rd. And I guess my daughter decided to get me out of the goat barn and come here.
Welcome. Glad you came.
Bob and Ellen Lister. This is my son Stephen. And we live in Fletcher. for 6 months of the year. And we live in Florida in the winter time. And thanks for having us.
And this is my brother, Davis, my
Oh.
older brother, and his wife.
Let's see. Okay, if you are interested in finding out more about our community or getting our weekly email, please see anyone with an orange name tag. Michelle, who is here, and there's an orange name tag, is our membership chair and will be at the greeting table in the foyer where you got your name tag after our service. I have one announcement today, and the rest can be found on the bulletin board in the foyer. Let's see, here's the announcement. As the Social Action Committee continues to focus on climate justice, we are hosting several events in September. Make sure you stop by the information table in the portico to learn more about collection of hazardous waste and small, hard to recycle items, Hannah Ritchie's book discussion at Black Mountain Library, and the restoration of a pollinator garden at Lake Tomahawk. Yeah, go, us.
Heidi, one more, if you would, please.
Yes.
One more announcement. Your program today, I noticed that there were things that were missing. I was out last week. The admin printed everything up. She hit the wrong button. There is a complete program, but she printed out the wrong one. So Reverend Tommy and Sue are gonna lead us through the hymns and tell us what is what this morning.
That's why there are notes all over this program, and I better not take it away or we'll be lost, yes. Okay, so finally, let's read the land acknowledgement statement together. It can be found on the back of your order of service in the upper right-hand corner. We acknowledge with respect that this land is the sacred ancestral home of the Cherokee and other native peoples who survived and continue to make their home here. We deeply regret the genocide and broken treaties by which their land was stolen and from which we all benefit. We support the Cherokee as we seek redress for these injustices. We also acknowledge that this country was built on the stolen labor and denied ownership of land to enslaved Africans who continue to experience oppression, economic injustice, and generational trauma. We bear a moral and spiritual responsibility to oppose and work to eliminate the ongoing harm of white supremacy and racism. Let us begin the service.
Come into the circle of love and justice. Come into the community of mercy, holiness, and help. Come, and you shall know peace and joy. Our opening hymn is 360.
reading comes to us by Diana Butler Bass. It's entitled A Debt-Free World. The free movement of gifts in a non-hierarchical structure is the very heart of Christianity. Although we often spiritualize it, gratitude is deeply and profoundly political and opens us to the revolutionary idea of a debt-free community that shares the mutual gift, the mutual benefit of creation's gift.
I'm going to stick with Diana Butler Bass in our meditation. If you want to read her, she has a Substack, everybody does. It's called The Cottage. And I think among folks who are reflecting on our world today from a theological and spiritual perspective, she's one of my go-tos. A few weeks ago, she wrote about the toxicity of life in this country right now and what she is struggling with, as many of us, if not all, are. Friend, if you haven't read anything about moral trauma, that's something you may want to read about, because I think in many ways we're all experiencing moral trauma. And the thing that she advised a couple of weeks ago was the serenity prayer. Not as an individual prayer, but in a corporate way. So I'm going to begin with some silence and then invite us to, I'm going to read it several times or speak it several times, and join me together, and instead of I, help, it's help, it's, let's use the word we. God grant us, let's make it corporate. So let's start with silence. Deep breath and release. God, or universe, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Again. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Our next hymn, 134.
God
For those of you who are new to us, it is one of our rituals that we invite you to come up to the front. We have water, we have stones, we have the fire to light candles or to drop a stone in the water to commemorate those joys that you have experienced this week and any sorrow that you carry that you would like us collectively to carry with you. So we invite you to stand and come to the front and either drop a stone or light a candle.
For those of you who chose not to come up this morning, I'll drop this stone in the water. Please know that our hearts and minds and thoughts and prayers are with you, whatever you're going through right now.
Our church and congregation thrives on the energy that we share together every Sunday morning or all those times during the week when we're blessed enough to get together. But our church also thrives and needs that which you can give us to keep us going and help us support this congregation and our community. So at this time, we would like to pass the basket for our offering and ask you to put in it what you can, if you can. Thank you very much for your generosity.
Hey, it's great to be back. I was here back in July, and I had a great experience sharing that day about common thread. And y'all learned some things about me, so briefly I'll introduce myself. I'm ordained Presbyterian minister, PCUSA. I work and run a couple of lodges in Montreat. I've always stayed on the fringes of traditional church stuff, primarily in camp and conference, retreat work, and campus ministry. I was in Boone for 11 years as the Presbyterian Episcopal campus minister there, but also teaching at the university. And then I got involved in this place called F.A.R.M Cafe that you're going to hear about today. But it is very good to be back, and I thank Marty and Rochelle for the invitation to be here this morning. And if you were here in July when I spoke, you might remember I shared the journey, that common thread that I hold as I have moved through the various expressions and purpose in my life. And this morning, I want to focus on one experience through that journey and the takeaways which I continue to ponder and invite you to ponder with me this morning. The topic I'm pondering, and you see it in the bulletin, is economics. Specifically, a perspective on economics which the author, activist, speaker Charles Eisenstein calls sacred economics, and which I prefer to call transformational economics, as a way to differentiate from the transactional economics, which is primarily practiced in Western culture. It's what we tend to have, but I like to think, can economics be transformative? Can it change us? Can we encounter one another differently in the economics, in the social setting of our economic life together? Can we change the world? My interest in looking at economics through a different lens primarily goes back to my time in Boone, when I served on staff at F.A.R.M Cafe, Feed All Regardless of Means Cafe. It's a donate what you can, pay what you can cafe there on King Street, right in the heart of downtown, in the old Boone drug. However, as I think about it, it goes back even further than that. I remember a time in my early teens when I was mowing our family's yard and I thought, this economic system in which we function is truly dysfunctional and obviously skewed in favor of the wealthy and powerful. Of course, that's not what I thought. It was more like, this crap ain't fair. There has to be something better than the rich and powerful getting richer and the poor getting poorer. It was the early 70s and inflation was rampant. The 25 to 50 cents an hour that I earned mowing and working at the camp my parents ran, it just wasn't worth much anymore. That sucked. I seem to have a sense from a young age that the American capitalist system was not really working for everyone, only a few. I lived in Central Florida, not in Tampa, not on the beach. There was a lot of poverty around. The dominant cultural story of the American dream of conspicuous consumption, of accumulating the stuff and the symbols of wealth, of moving on up, y'all remember that show, was never consistent with my values. It wasn't my family's values. Though it is supposed to be an American value, I really wonder how many people would put getting rich in the top 5 of their true values, if really questioned, if they really thought about it. After spending my first years after college working as a Vista volunteer, as director of a halfway house for persons coming out of prison, I stepped off the American dream train. Living in a community of persons on the lowest rung of the U.S. economy, trying to restart their lives after serving their time, I saw how privileged I was and had been throughout my life. I again began asking questions. But soon, when I married, when I had children, the realities of living in America took hold. I needed to provide, make a living, save for my boys' education. Even so, my deeper values would find ways to express themselves. I began and continue to get my clothes from Goodwill or other thrift shops. This shirt came from there. I've tried not to focus on consuming, accumulating stuff, and that was especially stark after cleaning out my parents' house when they passed, and they had 65 years of glorious accumulation. And I had to throw much of it away. I don't want to do that. Spending money, I choose to try to spend money on the things, the people, the communities, the experiences, the organizations that I value. I've continued to question and to be a critic of American Western consumerist capitalism. I try to be a conscious consumer, though I often fail. There's so many conveniences. Yet it was during my time in Boone, working as a volunteer coordinator and second chef at F.A.R.M Cafe, when my questions about alternative, transformational, community healing, earth healing, sustainable, economic expressions really began to find form. It was during my years at the cafe when I really began to think about what transformational economy, an economy that supported community and the growth, transformation, becoming, evolution of humanity and human culture might look like. After all, I experience that every day at F.A.R.M Cafe. That this different approach, this different lens, this different economy was truly transformative in the Boone community and continues to be so 15 years after it opened. Recently, as I continue to question and deepen my understanding of transformational, sacred economic alternatives, I found Eisenstein's book, Sacred Economics. This book has provided much fodder for my thoughts and questions a brief summary of which I'll share with you this morning. Before I continue, I do need to note that I don't necessarily agree with everything that Eisenstein proposes or postulates in his book. I read books that I do not agree with necessarily. He was for a time an advisor to Robert Kennedy Jr., though he did not continue to be involved with Kennedy when Kennedy joined Trump's campaign. Eisenstein also seems to see much more conspiracy than I do. Some of his concepts and proposals are certainly unrealistic for a long time to come, if ever. However, as I said, his book has provided fodder, something for me to chew on for my questions, and I hope it might do the same for you this morning. So, a little depth there. Premise. His first premise: the dominant imperial capitalist economy is and has been destructive to community and to the earth, our shared commons, the land, air, water, and other life on earth. These systems include state-imposed communism as it evolved. They evolved from ancient Byzantine, Greek, Roman, Egyptian, Chinese imperialist cultures, beginning and evolving from around 6,000 to 7,000 years ago. That is to say, this hasn't always been the way. At the center of each of these is an individual emperor monarch who is, according to themselves, convenient, isn't that they are God's appointed. The emperor king monarch essentially owns and controls everything and everyone in their realm. In one way or another, everyone works for the emperor in various levels of enslavement. Today, instead of working for or being enslaved by the emperor, we work indirectly for the institutions of empire, the banks, the state, the insurance companies, the retailers, feeding the ever-increasing wealth of the few, the neo-emperors, who hoard and hold more wealth than nations. In contrast, more ancient peoples, cultures, and pre-imperial systems were what Eisenstein calls gift economies, localized and much less inherently destructive and consumptive. These cultures and their economies held the creator gods as the provider, the gifter of all life, the necessities of life. As all life, food, water, earth was a gift, humans were stewards of these gifts rather than owners. Therefore, it wasn't just that the gifts were to be shared among the people. It was a sin against the will of the Creator and destructive, counter to community, to do otherwise. Many, if not all religions, including Judaism, Christianity, Islam, have within their sacred texts elements of this pre-imperial economic system. The concept of the gifts of life, of all things coming from the Creator, is core in many religions. The prayer of Jesus, the Lord's Prayer, found in the Christian Gospels, is in many ways based on this principle. It attributes to God the role of giver-gifter, of daily bread and therefore human life, of all life. In the Presbyterian version, which I learned as a child, we even use the phrase, "Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors." That's certainly sacred economics. Premise 2. Eisenstein says that charging interest and causing others to incur indebtedness is at the core of brokenness of capitalist imperialist economic system. It's broken from the start. Again, Judeo-Christian scripture ascribes clear guidance, as clear as any orthodox laws regarding debt and indebtedness. In the book of Deuteronomy, the book of laws, in the Torah, chapter 15, at the end of every 7th year, cancel all debts. This is the procedure. Everyone who has lent money to a neighbor writes it off. You must not press your neighbor or his brother or family for payment. All debts are canceled. God says so. That interpretation's from Eugene Peterson's The Message. Imagine how different the country would be, the world would be, our lives would be, if every 7 years there would be forgiveness of debts, freedom from indebtedness. Then this ancient book of laws for the community of God goes further. It describes freeing slaves as a requirement every 49 years. A year of jubilee when land was returned to the original holders, debts were forgiven, and slaves were freed. These are obviously not some of the more attended to texts in the Bible. And I often think that we should raise these texts to those who want to proof text and take literal text of biblical passages regarding such things as homosexuality. LGBTQ people and allies should stop loving who they love as soon as you cash out your investments and give your land back to the original stewards. Perhaps the Cherokee. Premise 3. Eisenstein advocates in his book for negative interest. An economy that is well for a community is one where goods and services flow freely among the people, primarily localized, rather than one where wealth is hoarded and held by those few most benefiting from that economy. Therefore, charging negative interest, making it costly to hoard, would be better for an economy that truly values the contributions and participations of everyone. Hoarding wealth, not surprisingly, along with charging interest, is actually counter to the health and wellness of the whole community. Again, in Christian scripture, there is the story of Jesus where he is asked, should we pay taxes to Rome? Jesus said the same thing. Well, he didn't quite say that. Jesus looks at a Roman coin that has the image of Caesar on it. And he says, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and render unto God what is God's. This is such a revolutionary statement, and it's some of what got him killed. After all the lands that Rome ruled through their empire were all deeply in debt to the empire and the emperor. Tax for maintenance of the occupying army. The building of Roman towns and palaces, none of which the people of that land asked for or really wanted. If you know ancient Palestine, Caesarea was built, a beautiful place on the coast, for the Romans to live, to vacation. The people who built it could not live there. And the people who paid for it with their taxes and their labor could not live there. Sound familiar? In the stories through Mark's gospel, one finds a Jesus who knew that the empire was a system of enslavement, economic and literal enslavement. When Jesus says, render unto Caesar, he is in effect saying, unbind yourselves from your enslavement to this coin, this power of Rome. Let it go. Do not give it power that it doesn't really have. It's an illusion, a story, a lie. Rather, render unto God or the universe what is of creation beyond human hands. Be it God, the creator of the universe, the sacred mystery, the gifter, provider of all, according to Jesus' teachings. One lets go of everything and trusts in the gifts and abundance and love that is in creation. Premise 4. valuing what is truly valuable for life. What is that gold? What is that coin? What is money or the symbol really worth? Eisenstein asks, isn't the air we breathe, the land which feeds us, nurtures and sustains us, the water which sustains life, truly valuable for existence? Isn't community and connection with others, without which we cannot survive, truly valuable and necessary for human existence? Then why does the story we tell ourselves and share with our children put value in shiny objects, in the money which is simply a means of exchange, with no inherent value, a numbers game that can rise and fall in value depending on the whims and manipulation of those who hold the levers of power? We are taught to value an illusion that benefits a few, that corrupts the earth, corrupts community, and corrupts things for generations to come. Premise 5. Finally, Eisenstein, as I have noted, offers a more ancient alternative, a gift economy, which acknowledges at its core that we, human beings, none of us actually own anything. All we have is gift from God, from earth, from whatever we want to attribute as giver, provider. And these gifts come with condition, responsibility that we share them, not hoard them, that we steward them, that we care for these things for future generations. These are now ours not to own. We are stewards of the gift of creation, and we hold, hoard, or claim them as our own. We are breaking our relationship with one another, with the earth, and with generations to come. That's a lot, isn't it? Interesting stuff. Challenging stuff. But back to Farm Cafe, where we see this lived out a little bit. When I was in Boone, I would say that Farm Cafe was my favorite church, because all we ever did every day was open the door and feed people, regardless of means. I also would say that Farm Cafe, that food was the excuse for a community to happen. We set the table, and community happened. In his book, Eisenstein offers that cafes in the one world everybody eats model, of which Farm Cafe is one of the oldest and most successful, yay Boone, is a great example of entities that express the gift economy. Farm Cafe operates on an assumption of abundance, enough to share. The dominant transactional economy assumes scarcity, the capitalist principle of supply and demand, and sets a system of exchange to establish the value cost of a meal, what the market will bear. Farm Cafe assumes that there is enough, actually more than enough, abundance, and invites everyone to contribute to the shared meal of the day with whatever means they have to gift the community with. Whether that be a donation of more than the value, equal to the value, less than the value, volunteering in exchange for the value of a meal, or receiving a meal and being present in community as their gift to community. Everyone contributes, gifts the community, and receives the gift of a nutritious, tasty meal, and also the community that comes with it. What makes Farm Cafe and other one world everybody eats cafes different than other efforts such as Manna Food Bank, soup kitchens, or open tables, which I no mean want to discount, is that the structure of an everybody eats cafe intentionally breaks down the separation, the hierarchy between those who have who give, who serve, and those who lack, those who receive or are served. At F.A.R.M Cafe, everyone contributes, gives of themselves, either by donation, volunteering, providing music, or simply their presence in community. And everyone is served, everybody eats the same meal, which is prepared fresh from local farms, rather than from donated food that is often cast off, surplus in a wasteful food system. The table is leveled. You don't know who comes with needs, because in fact, we are all in need of being fed. Everybody eats. I would love to see one of these cafes in Black Mountain or here in the Swannanoa Valley. And if you want to learn more, if you want to explore this further, let's talk. Be glad to share my contact information. Or go to Boone and check out F.A.R.M Cafe. So of course, having served for over 5 years at F.A.R.M Cafe in the gift economy, I wondered how and where else might this format, this model work? Where else might we plant those seeds? Where else might we find expressions, discover that growth of something different? Even very emergent expressions of gift or transformational economy. As you may know, White Horse Black Mountain, following Helene, decided not to have a set ticket price, but has a pay-what-you-can model for nightly performances, and even follows this through at the bar for beer and wine. The Montfort Park Players, performing free Shakespeare in the park, has operated on this model, basically, since it began 53 years ago. As John Russell always says at the start of each show, isn't free theater great? I also see this model expressed on Patreon and other online communities. Patreon specifically is a community of individuals supporting artists, as well as supporting artists through having patrons, people gifting that artist, supporting them. I've heard artists say that since they started participating in Patreon, they have a base income that they've never had as an artist before. What a gift. Public television and national public radio function this way, and now entirely this way thanks to Project 2025. They function on a gift economy. The community contributes, pays what it can to keep these public airways open. Please may it continue to be so. I also perhaps saw, and perhaps you did as well, the gift economy reemerge, because I think it's part of human nature, in the days following Helene's devastation. In the absence of the elements overlay of the functional dominant cultural economy, which is transactional, the gift economy, transformational economy, of sharing what we had with neighbors in need, came forth. Sharing what we had with one another, period. I heard of many, and I experienced myself, gatherings of neighbors who brought what they had to share, together in one place, sharing meals, sharing stories, sharing tears together, taking care of one another, and doing this for weeks, until the structures and the systems and the functions of the transformational, transactional imperial economy resumed, and we'd all return to feeding and serving it, rather than serving one another. We glimpsed it. We knew it. We felt it. We relished in it. It was so fascinating to experience, to witness firsthand how in the circumstances after Helene, and the circumstances of the absence of functional technology, electricity, water, government, etc., we innately turn toward one another, to community, to neighbor, and perhaps to our ancient roots, our true humanity, and we gifted one another for a while, for those few weeks. We transformed. We let go of the selfish, hoarding independence which our culture teaches, and we rediscovered our deep interdependence, which the universe, which nature demonstrates consistently as a fact rather than illusion. Which brings me to my final point, and to another reason for my interest in questions in regarding alternative economics. Even back in the 70s when I was a young teen, I could see that the dominant systems weren't working well. The stories weren't holding water. The center wasn't holding, period. Ever since, I and perhaps you have been aware that there is an unraveling of the structures and the illusions that have held up the capitalist, democratic, imperialist dominant culture that most of us, as predominantly white Americans, prosper and are privileged within. Even the current efforts of neo-fascists and fundamentalists to MAGA their way back to dominant power is primarily a destructive but vain effort to prop up a failing, falling, and unsustainable system. If we live through the coming generations, if the generations to come live through this current destructive, reactive, petty, and sinful counter-movement, there will perhaps be an opportunity to reimagine and retell stories that are conducive and constructive for human existence on this planet. Historically, even in capitalist, imperialist Western history, when things become so imbalanced between the haves and have-nots, there have been corrections, revolutions, uprisings. Perhaps it is wishful, hopeful, unrealistic thinking, but I do imagine that there might be a kind of jubilee of sorts, a continuing emergence of transformational gift economy, or some other form that recognizes and acknowledges, as does the UU principle, interdependence. All is connected. We are all connected. All is one. As noted, this innate sense of sharing gifts re-emerged and re-emerges when we find ourselves in crisis, like Helene. It is among the stories we share when we follow the storm. Isn't that wonderful? How we know other storms are coming, again, in some form or fashion. Perhaps storms whose aftermath will last even longer. Perhaps, and hopefully, we can continue to be aware and make the best of such challenges and continue to learn from these opportunities as we again might experience what it is to live in community, sharing the gifts before we return to the enslavement, to the hoarding, selfish, individualistic illusions of wealth. May we remember. Remember. May it be so. Our closing hymn is 121.
All the morning,
The Serenity Prayer reminds us to have courage and to seek wisdom. It is around us. It is emerging. It's in places where we might least expect it. It's in communities that gather, seeking peace and justice. Go forth, be in community, live in peace.
Please join us in coffee hour.